Today we're going to be doing a small roast on the 2022 BC5. We've had some question with the upgrade to the new heavy-duty fan, whether you can still do small batches. So we're going to do a 1 pound batch, and then we're going to try to do a ½ pound batch to see if it's still possible to do that low. I'm sure we can do a 1 pound batch without any problem, but we're not quite as sure if we still have as much control doing a 8-ounce batch with the BC5. So we're going to be testing that today, and we hope you enjoy following along. So we've got a 1 pound batch here of Brazil coffee. We're going to dump into the hopper, then we're going to preheat it and get ready to do a roast. So we wanted to do a 1 pound batch first, and then when we do the follow-up roast, we're going to go ahead and try to do a ½ pound, because sometimes the issue is you can do a small batch on your initial roast because the roaster itself and the metals are not thoroughly heated, but it becomes more difficult to do second, third, fourth batches as small, so we wanted to do that. So we'll go ahead and preheat the roaster and then get going. For those of you that may be new and aren't aware of the controls and the various features of the BC, this is our power button. This is how we turn it on. When we turn it on, it automatically turns on the electronics, the ohm drum. The drum should start turning, and your chaff fan should start working. I'm going to turn my chaff fan to about 1.5 to start it. You can open this valve up a little bit on your gas, making sure you've already tested all the lines, and then go ahead and test it, and you can watch the control there. And if for some reason your unit doesn't light within 3 seconds, you'll get that warning signal, and just cut off the igniter button and do it again. You may need to make an adjustment on the air control there at lit. And usually when it's lit and stays lit, you'll see the igniter button light up and stay lit. Plus you'll be able to see the flame inside the roaster. So we're going to go ahead and leave the airflow fairly low, a little bit below 2, and I'm going to turn up the gas quite a bit. This is a propane model, an LPG liquid propane gas, and we're going to let it preheat probably to about 450 degrees, just because that will help the metals actually get up to where we want it, which is at about my sweet spot for charging is about 350 degrees. So we'll be back in a minute to go into that. If you're hearing a little excess background noise, because I've got a cooling fan on in the warehouse, because it's even though it's the end of September, it still gets up to a little over 100 out here in Arizona. Needless to say, as I mentioned before, when I do an initial roast preheat, rather than having to preheat my roaster like some companies say for 40 minutes to achieve the ideal steel temperatures, I usually just like to bring it up about 100 degrees hotter than what I'm planning on roasting at. And then I cut off the gas, turn down the airflow, see how quickly it drops, and if it balances out within a minute or so to the area or to the temperature that I'm comfortable with, then I go ahead and charge my first roast. After your first roast, back-to-back roast, it's no big deal, but on that first roast, I don't want to wait 40 minutes like some companies say, or 20 minutes to do my first roast. So we're up to 456. I'm going to go ahead and cut off my gas, turn down my airflow practically to 0, and watch the temperature drop. And within about a minute, if it balances out or starts to slow down at around 350, that's really about where I want it for regular coffee. I would go lower for decaf. So it's been a little over a minute, and it's close to 350. So I'm going to go ahead and charge my beans. Some people like to do the soak, which is basically leaving the gas on real low or off completely while for about the first minute of the charge. The idea is that it will even out the heat in the bean. I'm not super concerned with that, but it can be done as well. It's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and kick my gas back on. I should have hit my timer, which I didn't. And I'm going to cut my gas way back because we're only doing a pound. So I'm going to go with about a half a kPa, and I'm going to monitor closely, you know, the turnaround, where the turnaround time is, as well as I might go up just a little bit higher, maybe up to 1 kPa just to start off with, and monitor where the turnaround is to make sure that it's within that period of time that I like it to be, which is about 1 minute and 15 seconds. Obviously, because I didn't hook it up to a computer and also did not reset the timer when I charged the beans, that's slightly off. So the turnaround's at about 205.6 or something like that. And it probably is right at about 1 minute and 15 seconds because I blabbed and didn't reset the timer right when I charged the beans. So now the critical point is to watch how long watch the rate of rise and watch how long it'll be to get to the drying phase. If I would have taken the time, which I should have, and I think I will on the second roast, hook up the Artisan with my Mac, it would give me predictive features as to where I would be at about 5 minutes. And granted, you hear that big 5-minute thing. You know, a lot of people within 3.5, 4 minutes, all the way up to 7 minutes will allow for the drying phase. I know many professional roasters that roast on huge roasters that go beyond the 7-minute time. The idea is you don't want the rate of rise to be so slow or to stall out to where you're basically just baking the beans rather than roasting them. So rather than bore you through this entire roast, we'll tune in and tune out as we get to key points. So keep in mind that when you're doing a pound or a half pound on a BC5, your BT or bean temperature is not going to be 100% accurate because, and I'll show you when we go to the front of the roaster, because your beans are not going to be thoroughly in that covering the probe. There is a way to lower the probe on the front of your roaster about 2 inches, which will help quite a bit for especially if you're doing a lot of 1 pound roasts. You're still going to have a little bit of an inaccuracy on when you're doing the half pound. It's pretty hard to cover half pounds of beans with a probe on a 5-pound roaster. But this gives you a pretty good general idea. If I felt it was going too slow, I could either bump up the gas pressure or bump up my airflow, because as you can see right now, the airflow is only at about 350 degrees, which will eventually be where most of the heat for the roast comes from, especially after the drying phase. But I think it's going pretty good right now. We're right at about 5 minutes, because my timer is probably 15-20 seconds off, and we're right at about the end of the drying phase. And as I look at the roast, it's starting to get that golden color. I'll take you over to the front of the roaster in just a minute. Yeah, so here we are, 320 degrees. I'm actually going to bump up my airflow to about 3. I'm going to kick back my gas to about maybe 0.6 of a kPa. And if you're able to look in there and see those flames, you're going to see, I'm actually going to go up to about 3/4 of a kPa. You're going to see those flames have gone down quite a bit. And if you look over at the Magnahelic airflow gauge, which I'll key into in a second, you'll see that there's not a massive amount of air running through this drum. Yeah, if you look at that, it's not even registering on the airflow until I bump it up to about 4. And part of the reason I'm keeping the airflow so low is I don't want to dry out the beans too fast. Also, I don't want to get the momentum of the roast going too fast either, because I'm doing a small batch. I think I can go up to about 4¼ though, and you can see it's registering now almost about 4 on the Magnahelic gauge. We're going to go over to the front of the roaster now and keep an eye on things, and I'll just read off the readings to you as we go. Hopefully you can see everything and it's not under or overexposed on the camera, but maybe it is. Let me go down just a notch. Okay, so here we are now. We're at about 7 minutes 45 seconds. We're at 372 degrees. I probably could have gone a little higher on the gas pressure to go into first crack, because now would be about a good time to go into first crack. And if you determine that you've made a mistake, there's nothing wrong with increasing the gas a little bit. I'm increasing it back up to about 0.9 kPa. I'm also bumping up my airflow to about 4 3/4. So what I've got is a temperature on the BT of 380 degrees, on the hot air right in that same area, 384 degrees, so only a few different degrees in temperature. So you can see it appears, at least on the initial roast, that it'd be no problem to do a pound and probably no problem to do a ½ pound. The question comes up once the roaster's heated up, how will it go with doing back-to-back sample roasts? And that's the question we're going to try to answer in the next couple of roasts. But keep in mind, if you are doing a lot of sample roasts, do them before you go into your massive roasting for the day. We're in first crack now. It's 387 on the BT, and about the same on the ET, actually a little lower, 387. Now it's 389 on the BT. I'm purposely keeping my gas low to keep the rate of rise low, as well as to I'm keeping the airflow at slightly under 5, which on the Magnahelic gauge is now registering at about 7. So I'm happy with what I see so far. I don't know how good you'll be able to see this, but it's a nice light brown. This is a Brazil, so we can probably comfortably take it up to about 430. Some people go higher. I don't like to get into the dark roast. So we're right now at just a little over 10 minutes. We're at 397 degrees on the BT, 390 on the ET, and I'm going to go ahead and make this about 11-minute roast, maybe even 12, because my rate of rise is not super fast. In fact, I'll take you over there. Yeah, we're at about 10 minutes 45 seconds when you adjust for the temperature or the timing that I forgot to set. Our BT is at 403. Our ET is still low. I kept it low so I can do smaller batches, because from the drying phase into the roasting phase, most of your heat is going to be coming from the airflow or the environmental temperature. It's a nice even roast. I just broke open a bean. I'll see if I can bring over a sample and maybe you can see it. It's still a fairly light roast. For people that like a lighter roast, now would be a great time to drop the beans. With Brazil, I don't like to go real light. I'll probably go up to about a 430 on this. And as you can see, I'm taking my good old sweet time. And while I do that, I'm going to get ready and measure out a ½ pound for the next roast. So we're right at 4:33. I'm going to go ahead and cut off my gas. I actually let it go up to about 13 minutes. And that's about where I like to go. Excuse the temporary piping I've got set up here. But that's about where I like to go on my Brazil, right about 430 degrees. A full city, a little bit under the full city plus. So we'll let that cool. I didn't get around to changing or getting a ½ pound. So let me get that ready and we'll go ahead and charge it and go from there.